is yours.
So we'll start with the prayer. Namaste. So we can all sing it together, and then I will also read the meaning, what is it means. Okay?
Maybe you and I should sing it.
Okay. So I will say the prayer, and then I'll read the meaning too, and you're welcome to join me. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanam Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So the literal translation of this is that Om, may we both be protected, may we both be nourished, may we work together with great energy, may our knowledge be radiant, may there be no differences or disputes between us. Om, peace inside, peace around, and peace in between. Okay? And I will ask now Gaurav to tell us about the Hinduism. Okay?
Namaste and welcome to Sisters and Brothers. My name is Gaurav Rastogi, and I'll give you a brief intro into the tradition. Tell me if I'm walking. I'm going to stand right here. I'll give you a little more talk about the tradition, who we are, what we're about, and then if there's time, we'll take a few questions. Is that all right? All right. This is a Sanatana Dharma temple, and I'll explain what that means and what it means and what this tradition is. This tradition is an open tradition, and we accept all paths to the divine. Each of your paths is also our paths. And that's literally what the tradition actually means. The word Sanatan refers to the timeless, eternal. Sanatan means that which has always existed. So if your child asks the question, what was there before the Big Bang? The answer is there must have been something that the Big Bang happened out of. And what happens when everything dissolves back? Something must remain. And so whatever is that which is timeless, we refer to that through the word Sanatan. In our tradition, there's another big word we use frequently. It's Sat. Sat means true, truth. And what is true today but not true tomorrow is not considered true. So I'm alive today. My name is Gaurav Rastogi. Tomorrow I may be dead. And does that mean this form is true? The answer in our tradition is it can't be true if it changes. So anything that is eternal and changeless is what we call Sanatana. And so that's one part of the tradition. But the other part of the tradition is Dharma. It's a word that's traditionally translated as religion, but it's not quite the same word. It's a word that might better be translated. The Greek might have called it arete. You might call it quality, virtue. You might call it Tao. It's the universal foundation of life and relationships. When there is structure, there is order in the universe as it is exists and is not deconstructing at this very minute. It means that there must be some underlying structure to the universe, some order. And it's that order that we refer to with the word dharma. Now, in our tradition, we understand that dharma isn't something which is set in stone. It's not something which is a set of rules that you have to read. It's always got to be inferred, and it's in the context of time, place, and circumstance that dharma changes. And the true way to find the dharma is through Shila. Shila is sort of right understanding of the relationships. And Indian epics tend to be about dharma. The two large epics are really about dharma. And not just in a mega sort of big picture view, between relationships, between a husband and a wife, a master and a servant, a charioteer and the rider. All of these relationships, the right understanding of these relationships is dharma. And because it's so complex, because it's so it varies so quickly time to time, it must be understood only in the heart. And that's why the epics are really about understanding that which changes a lot. So with Sanatan and Dharma, you have something that does not change at all and something which changes all the time, but must be understood in the context of the change, like a moving river that changes, but yet it's the same river. And it's the same with Dharma, which is it changes and yet it's the same. What is it? And those are the two words that make up the name of our tradition, the Sanatan Dharma. And that's why it's a universal, open, and welcoming tradition, because all paths to the divine are acceptable to us in the tradition. Now, the roots of this tradition go back thousands of years. It's a continuous living tradition, which is deeply rooted in the mystic and meditative. And the findings of those, the mystics, the seers, the sages, the poets, those findings, whatever they found on top of the mountain, they had to pass along to the tradition. And that's what the entire tradition is about, which is over thousands of years, people have gone up the mountain, they've tasted the sweetness, they've come back and told other people how to get there. And everything that you see in the tradition is just passing the tradition along, so people understand that there is a way to directly engage with the divine personally. And that way, there are thousands of ways, millions of ways, as many ways as there are hearts. And here are the patterns which you can follow. And so, at the core of our tradition is this. It's a personal connection with the divine. You're here in this temple. I'll talk to you a little about the murtis behind us. The entire tradition is about building a direct, personal, and immediate connection with the divine. And it has to be personal. And that's the reason this is a challenge. I'm sure you're people of faith, so you probably understand this. When someone gives you sugar cane, if I just show you a photo of a sugar cane and I tell you that it's sweet, it does not transmit the experience. You do not know that it's sweet other than my saying so. So how do I give you the same sweet taste in your mouth? The only way I can do that is I can tell you where the sugar cane is, how to identify it, and then how to eat it. And then that which you know how to be sure that this is the sweetness, and what are the signs of that sweetness. I can lead you up that journey, and I can tell you that. So the entire tradition is based on this idea that the experience of sweetness is personal. And everyone can and must experience that sweetness, but they have to follow along a journey. And all of the tradition, this temple and everything else that our tradition has, are ways to engage with this sweetness. One way is through aphorisms, sutras. So when Einstein wrote E is equal to mc squared, I'm sure he understood what he meant. I'm sure a few other people who read up enough to PhD level physics at that time understood what he meant. But for the rest of us, E is equal to mc squared. It's a nice thing to put on a t-shirt. But what does it mean? We don't know what it means, but it does carry a lot of information. You could make bombs out of that information. It's the same with aphorisms. Because our tradition was oral for thousands of years before we wrote, it was important for us to make it memorable, make it pithy. And the pithy parts made it into sutras. And so if you look at Patanjali Yoga Sutra and a lot of other sutras, they're highly concentrated, single words, bless you. With one word, you would explain all of our philosophy. And so there are a lot of these Mahavakyas, which are super concentrated explanations of the divine, ways to connect with the divine. And that's one way. You could look at the sutra, you could remember it, you could play it in your heart all the time. You could sit by a master, they could explain to you what that sutra is, what it means. They could unpack it for you. And that's one way of passing the tradition along. And there's a very wide stream of sutra literature that's available. But again, sutras never come alone. You never just take E is equal to mc squared. You always have bhashyas, which are commentaries. So over hundreds or thousands of years, people have written commentaries. So somebody wrote something super concentrated, and then somebody will write a commentary on that, and then somebody will write a commentary on the commentary, and so on. Because you always have to reinterpret those for the modern people. even right now as we speak, I'm doing this myself with my work, which is explaining these individual one-word items to people. For example, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, I teach yoga and meditation as well. And Patanjali Yoga Sutra is relatively well known here. People have heard those words before. The first two words of that are Atha Yoganushasanam. Now the discipline of yoga must begin. And in just pretty much that, his entire work is done. It's all done. There's nothing more to be said. In fact, just with the first word, Atha, now, you could explain the entire tradition, because it's about the very fast-moving time. So that's sutras, and that's one way of passing the tradition. Another is Shruti, which is mystic poetry and sung verses that you would hear, and in singing and reciting and listening to them, they would unpack themselves. These are not meant to be read like English prose, but they're meant to be sung and recited, because the meaning only becomes clear when you recite, not when you hear it. Then there are whispered conversations, Upanishads, which are sort of appended to some of our 4 big books. The Upanishads, and there's 108 Upanishads or probably more. Upanishad literally means come sit near. And so these were not things that you would stand on a soapbox and scream aloud to an audience of 10,000, because to an audience of 10,000, you can't have nuance. You can only say things that are blunt, like very rough. So when you have to say something with nuance, you have to say, come, sit near. And that's literally what the word Upanishad means. Come sit near, let me explain to you what is what. And so there's a very deep tradition of Upanishads and that. But then there's tradition that passes not with any words at all. It's practiced. Acharyas. So there are teachers whose life is their message. So you have to come, sit, live with them, and in their living, you have to understand what the tradition is, inferring it from their actions rather than their words or language. And that was also a very deep tradition. Then there's Puranas. Puranas means old tradition. And that's where the gods, the stories, the scriptures, and the fasts are included. A lot of the scripture and tradition that you might read about come from the Puranas, which are also a part of our tradition. I'm just giving you a sort of a very quick Cliff Notes version of the temple here is part of a much wider context of passing the tradition along over thousands of years. So the only reason the tradition's sort of been a lived and continuous tradition over thousands of years is because we've had many ways of passing it. And I'm just going through the list. Then there's the yoga lineages. Yoga, not just the asana variety, but yoga as a means of self-realization, knowing more about ourselves and the true nature of this universe. In our understanding, this material universe, and I'm sure yours is similar, this material universe, what we see isn't the reality. There is a spiritual reality which is a higher level. But how do you get to it? How do you see that reality? How do you know yourself? And those became part of the yoga traditions. And there's a lot of yoga traditions, lineages that have passed down through hundreds or thousands of years. And these are also valid traditions. And they have their own practices, they have their own, books, their own secret sort of societies and so on, everything. And then finally, we are right here at this temple, which is a place for our community to gather. This is a place for the community to meet together. We also have rituals here. Festivals are held here, storytelling, a lot of that goes on, and dialogue of the type we have here. You're here and we're talking. And that talking itself is a part of how the tradition has grown. In the Indian traditions, there's a healthy disagreement within tradition. It's a very varied tradition. And within each sort of branch of the tradition, there's a healthy sort of debate, healthy sort of culture of debate. And these debates would happen, and they would be well sought out, like tennis, like boxing matches. People would come by and see those debates. And it's important for the tradition, and that's how it's being passed along all this while. So this temple serves as a seat for that kind of transfer to happen. But you can see that this temple is part of a much wider ecosystem of ways of passing the tradition along. At the core of our traditions, most of our traditions, is the idea of Ishta, which is a loved deity. Ishta means loved, deity. Ishta Devata means loved deity. The underlying understanding of existence for us is probably the same as your tradition, which is there is a formless existence which cannot be named because any name would be too small, any form would be too small, right, too limiting. And that which cannot be named must still be named, because how else would we know them? And that's why in our tradition there is the tradition of the loved deity, because how else can we know the nameless and the formless? And so all the deities that you see behind are only ways for our hearts to connect. There are as many deities as there are hearts, because only your heart knows what appeals to you, what is dear to you. And so the deities you'll see at the temples allow us to find one that our hearts connects to the most, and that's the deity that we appeal to. Fully understanding that the form and structure of the deity is only an indicator of the formless and the nameless divine. And you can see that in the modern world as well, even though people are atheistic. The thing is, people say the universe is doing X, or the markets are doing Y, or the hurricane is coming, right? These are forces of nature. You're still thinking of them as human beings. You even give them names like Harvey and Irma and Katie and Jose, right? Because that's how we engage as human beings. We cannot but think of anything in names in forms other than interpersonal. And so the personal becomes the pivot for our tradition, which is the deep connection with the heart must be from within. And then we come to the murtis here that you're seeing here. They're not merely statues. Through the process of prana pratishtha, which is infusing with prana is the moving living spirit, the murtis here are identical with the deity that they represent. They're non-different. It's the same as saying that there's sunlight, and the sunlight is the same as the sun. We do understand that sunlight is an emanation of the sun, and the light that we see is an emanation of the sun. But it is in many ways non-different, because it is an indicator of the sun. And it's the same here. The murtis are indications of divinity. The form themselves is not limiting. It is well understood that the form refers to a formless, nameless divine. And it's just that we think more with this deity or that deity, and that's the route that we take from our heart to there. A few more things. One of the oldest, remember I talked about come sit near Upanishads? One of the oldest traditions, in fact, the oldest Upanishads and the shortest, 18 verses, is the Isha Upanishad. And it begins with, it's actually really nice. It's 18 verses. You can read them, cover to cover in one sitting. But the first verse it translates into this: Ishavasyam idam sarvam. The loving spirit envelops this world, whether changing or unchanging. Knowing this, renounce and enjoy everything for what can be possessed by anyone. And that's the first verse. What it's saying is pretty obvious, that there's no need to be greedy. There's no need to be sad or surly. This world is meant for enjoyment, but not for possession. And that the living spirit infuses not just outside or above or out after death or before death, in me, in you, in the space between us. The living spirit envelops everything. And that's just the first verse. That's one verse.
Time check.
I'm just almost done. All right. The next is in Patanjali. Patanjali talks about Ishwar Pranidhana. So in the yoga tradition, Ishwar Pranidhana means seeing everything lovingly as one, non-different. When I see you, and I'm sure you've heard the cliche of Namaste, which is I bow to you, but the divinity in me bows to the divinity in you. The essence of that is love, an attitude of love and connection that we feel with all of, with everything, not just humanity, but everything. And that comes to the way of the heart, Bhakti Yoga, which is the tradition that a temple represents, which is how to open the heart and connect with the divine. All the practices that you see are really about this, seeing what can only be seen with the heart. Because the eyes already see, but we don't recognize. We can only know from the heart. So how do you open the heart? And that's all the bhakti traditions. If you see that we have at the temple, kirtan, chants, recitation, ritual, festivals, lights, incense, all of these are just ways to open the heart. Because once we open the heart, we can connect with the divine and we feel one. And that's why we're here. And that's all I had to say.
In interest of time, we will not take question answers.
Yeah, just closing prayers.
Yeah, because I'm not worrying about, we have plenty of time. I worry about whatever other thing we have planned.
Closing prayers.
Yes. Namaste again. So, with whatever time we have, I would like to tell you one story to take home. And it is from the Upanishad that he was talking to us about. And if you can you put that?
Yeah, sure.
So, as we grow up and as we go through all this knowledge and religions and worlds and there around the world what's happening, and then you feel like, who am I? Who am I really? I would say I have a body, I would say I have a mind, I would say I have an intellect, I would say my body, my name, my religion, my possession, my degree, I'm a mother, my motherhood, my profession. So out of this all mine, the one who says is mine, who is I? So one seeker wanted to know, who am I? So one goes to the teacher, and asks the teacher that I want to know, who am I? So teacher, like Gaurav was telling, that I cannot teach you. You have to find it yourself. I will guide you. So I says, okay, what do I do to know who am I? So he says, okay, go out in the world and find out who you are. So he goes out in the world and he thinks he can see with all the five senses. He can see, he can smell, he can touch, he can feel. So he started feeling that I am the body. So he goes to the teacher and asks, am I the body? And teacher says, well, go and find out more. So then he goes back into the world and see that certain peoples are gathering around the dead body. So he goes there and asks them that, okay, what happened to this person? So he says, oh, this person is dead. Person is gone. So he started thinking, body is here, but the person living in this body is gone. So who is this person? So he says, so that's a life force. So he got excited and goes back to teacher. He says, I am the life force. Am I the life force? And teacher says that, well, you need to go and find more. So he again goes back into the world and he was standing by the stoplight. And he sees there was a person driving at the stoplight. The red light turns green and he was still not moving. So the person behind was honking. And he thought, okay, this person has a body, he's alive, but he's still somewhere else. So where is he? And who is he? So he says, I must be the mind. So he gets again excited and goes to teacher and says, am I the mind? And teacher says, there is still more. He says, okay. So he goes out again. He says, okay, let me find in the scripture, who am I? So he started reading all the scriptures, knowledge. There was all the knowledge, and through the scripture, studies different religions and studies different scripture, and then finally he feels that, I must be the knowledge, intelligence, because he felt like that intelligence is everything. So he goes back to teacher and says that I am the intelligence. Do you think that I am the intelligence? Am I? So teacher says, well, there is still more. So then he comes out and he doesn't know what to do anymore, because he says, okay, I'm not the body. I have a body, but I am not the body. I have a mind, I'm not the mind. I have an intelligence, but I am not the intelligence. I have a life force, but I am not the life force. Then who I am? So he doesn't know what to do, so he sits down under a tree and then he just closes his eyes and goes within, in a meditative form. And while he was meditating, leaving everything aside, the mind, the body, the intelligence, the knowledge, the scriptures, the religions, everything aside, and wanted to know, I don't want to know my religion, my body, my nothing. I just want to know who I am. And he sits down with that attitude and he finds the bliss. And then he wakes up from the meditation and he says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. That means I am the eternal, blissful peace. That's who I am. That's that I and my. When you separate the I and the my comes in Prakruti, attributes, and the I comes in the real soul, real self. So he realizes his true self. So the real teacher, who is called Gnani, that helps you, guides you to separate I and my. And when you can separate I and mine, and then like Gaurav was telling, that world is there, but when you separate I and mine and live very blissfully and peacefully, if you understand who is in the I part and who is in the my part. So that is called realizing your true self, eternal bliss, because I as a soul is an eternal bliss. That has nothing to do with all this Prakruti, Maya. I is God, Maya is Prakruti or Maya. And if you separate it and go out in this world, you are a self-realized person. So there are many self-realized persons in this world, and I know one of them who has guided me into this. I have some books with me that is for you to take home if you would like to know more into this. And because self-realization cannot be valued, the book has no value. It's for free, and you can dwell into it, and there are more about, you can know what is meditation, who am I, how does this universe, knowing God, how this universe functions, what is karma, and how this karma plays the role in our life. All those things are in content in that. So with that, I would close it. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham.